Okay, we have two related videos to do here, and I'm not doing them in order. We're going to do this one first, and then go back and do the thing that spawned this. So this is NASA replying to somebody. Clint has a good point about you can hurt yourself more than any SJW could by removing yourself from a platform. However, given the politics of crowdfunding, he may find his overall numbers decrease if he tries to double dip. Nasser replies, I could be wrong here considering I've never done a Kickstarter, but why does everyone assume you'll find hundreds of new customers there? Sure, a couple people could find it in the algorithm, but I think that most people backing a crowdfund are people that already know you / the people you promote it to. There might be a few new people, but is it really that many? Or are you just relying on people who already know you to go and back it? And then somebody else says, meanwhile, Clint isn't allowed potential growth that guys like Tim Lim have seen from doing Kickstarter and IndieGoGo campaigns. And Nasser replies, if Tim only did an IndieGoGo campaign and ran it for 120 days, since he does 60 on Kickstarter and 60 on IndieGoGo, he'd make as much as both platforms combined. Kickstarter and IndieGoGo aren't finding the backers for him. He has a large audience and hires artists with large audiences to do covers and pieces for the fan art gallery. The people backing that book are people who are fans of him. I think another good example of this is Earthworm Jim Book 2. Book 1 raised $800K on IndieGoGo. This is after Doug had already done Bigfoot Bill on IndieGoGo. Then he launched Bigfoot Bill 2 on IndieGoGo. However, with his fourth campaign, Earthworm Jim 2, he launched on Kickstarter. And it has screenshots. Earthworm Jim, 815 plus. Okay. And then Earthworm Jim, Fight the Fish, only 260. So, okay. And also massive drop in backers, over 9,000. Over 9,000! And less than 4,000. My point is that you condition your backers where to go. Doug told me himself he was looking for a new audience, and the audience on Kickstarter is so much bigger than IndieGoGo. Therefore, he wanted to launch Book 2 on Kickstarter instead of IndieGoGo. I don't know why these guys always want a new audience instead of ComicsGate, but anyways, it's lost like 70% of Book 1. So Doug lost money by changing platforms. Your audience expects it to be on IndieGoGo, and when it's not, they're unaware of your book, or they don't want to switch websites when you have them conditioned to always back on IndieGoGo. It's going to throw them off and go to another website, or to go to another website. No, the point of the argument is double dipping and not necessarily shifting platforms completely like Doug wanted to, and yes, I know he did an IndieGoGo after this too, but both combined didn't get to Book 1 numbers. But if there is such a big new audience on Kickstarter instead of IndieGoGo, why wouldn't Doug get to even half of what Book 1 did? Could it be that you send the backers instead of Kickstarter finding them for you? I don't know, that's just my thoughts. And so there are some replies here. Find them, because that's not one. Joke. Geez, Nasser, what about potential new backers who have never heard of you before? Why eliminate those you might discover you on Kickstarter as even a possibility? Fair point. There's literally zero downside to listing your product for sale to as many potential buyers as possible in as many places as possible. Crippling yourself by intentionally limiting your product's potential reach over some inconsequential Coke versus Pepsi debate is fucking stupid. Not wrong. Not wrong at all. generally speaking, it's like if you're, I mean, it's one thing if you're the retailer or whatever, then obviously you don't want, you don't want your customers going to the competition. But if you're the manufacturer of a product, then you want every retail outlet to carry it, and it's the same thing. It's like when it comes to crowdfunding, it's like there's two major platforms that not everybody knows about. There are some people who don't know that Kickstarter is a thing. And there are probably quite a number of people who don't know that IndieGoGo is a thing. So, yeah, there's a large crossover. I suspect, a lot of people like myself are on both platforms. But there's probably more people who are exclusive to Kickstarter than there are who are exclusive to IndieGoGo. And, if you're on both platforms, then that gives people the opportunity to choose which one they prefer to back you on, which I've previously mentioned. There are some pluses and minuses to both systems. Or not. Oh, here we go. Down here. Doug lost backers because he was selling an issue 2 of a nostalgia comic. He would have lost backers no matter what. Expecting casuals to return for multiple books would have been retarded. You understand sales and customer retention about as well as you understand pacing and character development. I wouldn't know that because I haven't actually read any of Nasser's books, at least not yet. I'd be interested to know, has anybody done, I don't really pay attention to channels like Well Read all that much, but has he or somebody else done like an actual review of any of Nasser's written material rather than just like a comic or something? Let me know in the comments if anybody knows of a review of his books. If you had any of this figured out, you would have kept your customers after you were excommunicated the first time. Instead, you lost it all and quit comics in disgrace until Big Daddy E took you back and suddenly CG Faithful were buying your stuff again. That's called access, and it's a tap that can be turned on or off regardless of whether you're on the boring talk show. When you were tossed out, the story was that you were a two-faced backstabber and no one in CG defended you, especially not Skyver or Malin. But now that you are welcomed back miraculously, you can get comics funded again, and you are defended from those who would still call you a backstabber. This isn't complicated. Clint's meh-level work looks like Hemingway next to yours. Isn't likely to survive without the very political approval of CG's elite establishment. If he wants to keep selling comics, he'd best know his role and not piss off his betters. You know this as well anyone. I assume this is supposed to be as well as anyone. And then this is a reply to something Nasser was replying to, literally zero downside. Not taking into account frenzy associated with crowdfunding, people will drop stupid amounts of money to hop aboard the hype train. Kickstarter regret is real, and I think many successful campaigns wouldn't never been funded. Okay, if people could have seen the final product up front, well, yeah, I mean that's true with anything that's like that. Image is everything when you're selling a house of cards. I don't know. I mean, there's no way to know. There's no way to know whether it's going to fucking suck until after you get it. So that's the problem with pre-ordering shit. Consolidating in one marketplace also increases the allure. Does it, though? I mean, maybe if you're talking about CG, then yeah, probably so. There's probably something alluring about, all the CG projects are on IndieGoGo. That's the only place to find them. Okay, but if you're not talking about some, sort of insular group, then if you're just talking about indie comics in general, then I don't think it would. I mean, maybe if all of them were on one platform, sure, but and Kickstarter just didn't have a comics section, but that's. Or if you could guarantee that all the people on one platform are not SJWs and all the people on the other platform are SJWs. But you can't do that either, because there's plenty of non-woke people and products on Kickstarter. And likewise, there's plenty of fucking SJWs and their woke bullshit on IndieGoGo too. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that, but you can fucking find it pretty easy. It's like there's fewer woke comics on IndieGoGo, but they're still there. And there's a bunch of woke other shit being done, movies. I don't know how many times, here's one thing that should be mentioned, I guess. When you get a campaign update email from a Kickstarter project, listed at the bottom are 4 other comic projects. Like if what you backed was a comic book, then that's 4 things that will be listed at the bottom of the message that are all comic books. I don't think I've ever gotten one that had something besides a comic on it, or at least, well, now I've backed I've backed 1 or 2 campaigns that are like playing cards, poker decks, and you'll get playing card poker deck campaigns or whatever listed. But that's what they do. It's like they list campaigns that their algorithm says are like whatever you backed. IndieGoGo, as near as I can tell, doesn't actually try to do that, because at the bottom of their message they'll have 4 or however many other campaigns listed, but only one of them is from the comics category. The others are from other categories, like somebody's doing a music video, somebody's doing an album, somebody's doing a movie, or short film or whatever. Somebody's doing some piece of electronic equipment of some fucking kind. That kind of shit. It's like they mix it up, and that frankly probably means that people are less likely to find another comic campaign that they're interested in, or campaign period that they're interested in, because they're trying to get you interested in things that you're not interested in, as opposed to catering exclusively to what you have backed and therefore you clearly have an interest in. So I think Kickstarter has the idea on how to work that down a lot better than IndieGoGo does. But that's also how I know for sure that there's woke bullshit going on, because be some short film about lesbians in whatever the hell city or whatever, and all this crap, and it's like, yeah, there's lots of woke bullshit. There's less woke comics on IndieGoGo, but there's plenty of woke bullshit in other categories. Alright, where was I? Consolidated. People like to see what they're buying into is popular and successful. Ethan's numbers wouldn't look as impressive if they were split between Kickstarter and IndieGoGo. Or if he skipped crowdfunding altogether and just sold direct on eBay. Well... they wouldn't look as impressive, but they still would be, because as of right now he is getting more numbers than anyone else on a repeated basis. But if he were to go to Kickstarter, I think that he would get even bigger numbers by virtue of picking up new customers who only use that platform and don't know about IndieGoGo for 1 or 2 campaigns before it evened out. This day he's still jealous of Drugs cross-platform success. Yeah, is he? EVS got already enough on his own plate to not be jealous. Also, I think Ethan, person who feasts on his enemies when they fall instead of watching them when they win. Yeah. But he didn't care much when Doug got all those subscribers and views, but he popped a nut every time another of Doug's channels got taken down. Okay. are expected to be on IndieGoGo's Nasser. If they're your audience, the only way they could be unaware of your book is if you fail to promote it. You make it sound like your backers are fucking retards. This isn't like having to take a bus all the way across town to another grocer because the Food King isn't selling the peanut butter you like. It's literally a website. It requires no more effort to back a book on IndieGoGo than it does to back one on Kickstarter. I have backed books on both platforms and was surprisingly not thrown off by having to visit a website. Yeah. You know how I knew the book I wanted was on Kickstarter? I saw an ad for it. Isn't it funny how that works? If having to visit a different website is enough to throw your backers into a fit because they don't want to switch websites. Damn it. As if any change in their routine will send them into a pants-shitting tizzy. Then your backers may in fact be a bunch of autistic retards. I'm honestly amazed at how much mental gymnastics are required for the CG people to just to justify not using one of the largest crowdfunding platforms on the planet. It always seems that no matter the different reasons for it, they always manage to bring up how difficult it is to break the audience's conditioning by selling a book on a different platform, and that they are easily confused and put off by the idea of registering a Kickstarter account. Of course, there's fair point there. I mean, anybody who suggests basically what Nasser seems to be suggesting with, what he wrote there, it's like, yeah, that's, to quote Bush, which I don't particularly care to do because I don't like Bush, but, it's like, that's kind of like the leftism of the leftism. The racism of the left is, they're the, what did he call it? The soft bigotry of low expectations. It's like that it makes it sound like that's what you think of your customers. Like you think, they're a bunch of fucking idiots. They wouldn't be able to figure out how to use a different website. It might confuse the poor dears. Let's make it as simple as possible for them. I mean, true, you do want to make things as simple as possible for your customers, but don't act like, they're a bunch of morons and they wouldn't be able to handle anything being slightly different. Of course, it's alleviated by selling on both platforms. Yes, and that makes all the sense in the world, quite frankly, to do both. And I don't, somebody's mentioned whatever, double dipping or whatever, and it's like, it does, like I said, any arguments against using both, people try to say, and it's all down to the whole, Zach got kicked off of Kickstarter. Well, sooner or later, Zach may very well decide to put a campaign on Kickstarter, and if they don't throw him off because he's made nice with the SJWs, which he's been doing for some time now, or at least trying to do, then it's going to be interesting to see people's arguments. It's like, well, how is your argument going to shift? Because you'll have to come up with a new one if he's on Kickstarter and he doesn't give a shit. That'll be funny. But any argument that, well, IndieGoGo is the good platform because it's not run by SJWs, it's like, but it is. You realize that IndieGoGo is not, some based company. It's like, they're a bunch of leftist shitbags too. They may not be as shitty as the leftist shitbags running Kickstarter, but they still suck. Just like all of big tech. Everybody. They all fucking suck. It's like, if you're using Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, etc., 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 you could be said to be part of the problem. In the same way that you could say, well, because you're on Kickstarter, you're part of the problem. It's like, no. If you're on any of these fucking mainstream platforms, you're part of the problem. So, if you want a crowdfunding platform that's going to be based and totally anti-SJW, then you're going to have to make it yourself. Because as far as I'm aware, it doesn't exist. Not currently. Which, I don't think that Ethan and company are in a position to try to make their own platform at the moment, but they could in the future. Although the problem there is, if you actually do make something genuinely separate, then as much as you might attract some people who are into the whole separating from the mainstream thing, you're gonna automatically cut off a bunch of people that would probably be willing to purchase your product. Because there's surely a lot of fairly centrist type people who buy Cyberfrog. Like they don't, like. So anything that Ethan does that makes them think that, oh man, he really is, an evil whatever, right wing, racist whatever. Anything that he does that might lead them to suspect that might be true. And building your own exclusive right-wing, crowdfunding platform might be something they consider to be a sign of that. Then he's going to lose those customers. So I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to stick with IndieGoGo because that's working for him. Would it work better for him to be on Kickstarter as well? Maybe. Don't know. But I don't think he believes that the potential advantages are sufficient to warrant him doing it. Where were we? The faithful, who are conditioned to only back books on IndieGoGo, won't have to face the scary wilderness outside of their favorite funding site, and another group of backers can find them on a far more popular platform. Backers who are also perhaps too autistic to leave the confines of Kickstarter. Yeah. Certain CG pros will say this is a bad idea, as their backers are, once again, easily confused and may just drool or stare blankly at their desktop if a comic is sold in more than one place. The average CG backer, according to CG creators. Yeah, it does. He often speaks about Doug's success being a motivating factor and the goal he's trying to beat. He even considered breaking his own rule and putting Cyberfrog on Kickstarter to try to beat it. Oh, I didn't remember that, but yeah, that is probably the one thing that would motivate Ethan, is wanting to beat somebody else. Consumer psychology comes into play when you're trying to court new customers. Since people can't see the finished product of a funding campaign, they have to come up with a proxy to guess at its likely quality. The number of people who have already backed a project is very easy to understand. Proxy for quality. It's not a guarantee, but if you showed two campaigns to a random normie, one of which had $50,000 and the other of which had $250,000 of backing, they're more likely to think the higher value one will have higher quality and a greater chance of being funded than the lower one. Splitting your campaign between multiple platforms can give people the idea that it's not as good a product because they're going to see a lower number, regardless of what the cumulative totals are. Since the whole point of diversifying would be to get more people to buy, you'd have to seriously consider whether the new pool of buyers would outweigh the people on the fence who decide not to buy because they look at your apparent lackluster sales and don't get excited. Well, there's a couple of things to say about that. One, I have seen plenty of campaigns, both on IndieGoGo and Kickstarter, where there didn't seem to be an enormous amount of hesitancy on people to back the project, even though its numbers were very low. Its starting numbers, its after the first day or so, and its finishing numbers oftentimes, not necessarily all that high, and yet it is successfully funded. And also, I will say that between the two of them, I've seen far more failures. Now, admittedly, I'm not trying to pay attention to all campaigns everywhere, but of the campaigns that I'm aware of, I've seen way the fuck more IndieGoGo campaigns fail to get to their goal than I have Kickstarter campaigns. Kickstarter campaigns, I haven't seen very many. I've seen a few that haven't met their goal, but most of them get funded. At least the ones that I've seen and backed. As a matter of fact, I think on Kickstarter there's only one campaign that I ever backed that failed, and that was Mike S. Miller's sort of Calvin and Hobbes style book that he was doing. Which, I thought it looked like it'd be, I like, I've always liked Calvin and Hobbes, so I thought, it's, that's neat enough. I go for that. But that campaign failed. Probably because he didn't ensure that he had enough of an audience interested in it beforehand, but anyway, and probably didn't do very good at letting people know that it was even a thing. But I can't remember precisely how many, but there's a number of campaigns that I've backed on IndieGoGo, CG campaigns that have failed to meet their goal, and and so I got refunded on it. So that's happened a lot more often on IndieGoGo than on Kickstarter. Just saying. Also, have to take into account the mechanics of the sites you're using. IndieGoGo promotion is heavily tied into what percentage your campaign is fulfilled, and that's why a lot of people do the which is, it's potentially dangerous, although I suppose, I don't know. I guess it's more a danger to the backers, because as far as I know, the creator on IndieGoGo can actually cancel the campaign. Like, you can decide, okay, this is not going to get enough money for me to be able to actually fulfill it, so I'm just going to refund everybody. As far as I know, you can do that. So a lot of them play with the algorithm by doing it's a $500 flexible goal. And then, oh yeah, look, we're funded. We're 1,000% funded, whatever. And there's, there are advantages to that, but that also means that, oh, look, you got $600, and even though you only asked for $500 as a goal, you knew that it's probably going to cost like $2,000 in order to do everything that I need to do. And then, then I guess under those circumstances, you got two choices. You can either refund everybody and be like, sorry, it didn't work out, or you can be like some assholes are and be like, yeah, I'm going to take the money and run. Which, admittedly, it'd be rather ridiculous to rip off your backers for $600. Unless you just decided that, oh well, I desperately need it. It's like I owe somebody $500, and if I don't pay them tomorrow, they're going to break my kneecaps. It's like, I guess under those circumstances it might make sense to you, but I don't know. Like, really dishonest people are probably going to try to raise as much fucking money as they possibly can and then walk away with that. Like what's his dick? Was that guy? I mean, he was before he was before my time, I guess. Before I paid attention to CG, knew it was a thing. Critias, that's it. Didn't he run away with several tens of thousands or whatever? I don't know. Anyway, if you manage to get your backing up over 300% of your stated goal, you're more likely to have IndieGoGo promote your material on their homepage and other places. That means more views from people outside your natural customer base. Yes. If splitting your campaign means you get 30% of the promotion that you would have if you kept it all in one place, then you're getting less exposure even if you're spread onto platforms. Another IndieGoGo mechanic is that matters to do a lot of campaigns is stretch goals. If people are doubling their purchase to help push the campaign to the goal that has the merchandise they're really excited about, then that could mean you get more money for your current backers. Also draw attention to purchases people who might not have been able to motivate early goals but get caught by later goals. If you're splitting your campaign, that's going to make it a lot harder to reach the stretch goals, which can lead to fewer customers and less money per customer. Now, there's one thing. What's being mentioned here in this paragraph makes it sound like stretch goals are something like cooked into the way IndieGoGo functions, but not the way Kickstarter functions, except they don't really have anything to do with either platform. Stretch goals are something that the campaign creator does, and they decide what the stretch goals are and what how much they need to get, and the one thing to mention, which I've mentioned in a previous video, is that on IndieGoGo you can back one tier and then you can turn around and back another tier. You can back as many times as you want. On Kickstarter you can only back once. You only get to make one pledge. And Kickstarter does have an add-on feature that some campaigns use, and it should work, but seems to sometimes be problems. Like sometimes, even though you made choices on with their add-on feature, so it should have recorded that data. Sometimes apparently it doesn't or something, and so you get hit up by the campaign creator later. Hey, what were your choices on this? And it's like, what do you mean, what were my choices? I gave my choices. Why the hell, don't you already know this? And so you got to go back and redo it, which is not unlike how it's worked in the past before they had that add-on feature for people to use, which was if you wanted more stuff, you were just supposed to figure out how much more money you had to add to it, which would be very difficult if you're not aware of how much shipping they might want to charge you for add-ons. And then you just added however much to your pledge, which also means that if you fucked up and you added more to the pledge than it was going to cost to get the extra stuff that you wanted, then even if you get the extra stuff, probably you're not getting a refund unless the creator just feels like doing you a solid. So anyway, there's a lot to not like about the mechanics of Kickstarter. They really should fix that so that you can back multiple times. Although they do allow you to go in and change things, which is frankly something IndieGoGo should consider doing, is allowing you to manage your pledge and decide, oh, I don't want to have to get a fucking refund in order to back a different tier. You can just change it from one tier to the other. That makes, frankly makes more sense. Or add on something that you forgot to add on. Alright. And as far as the lower stretch goals, we'll talk, I'll show the campaigns here, but one thing that Billy Tucci does is he does a campaign on both platforms, and if you've ever backed one of his campaigns, you probably know that he does this thing where he keeps track of the totals from both platforms and adds it together, to do his, what does he call it? No fan left behind or something like that. And so the stretch goals are actually based off of the combined total from both campaigns, not just from one or the other. So, and it's probably more work, logistically for the creator to do that, but it's doable, So if any creator wanted to do it that way, they could. There are many circumstances when it makes sense to put your work on multiple platforms, but to pretend like sticking to one is stupid doesn't take into account all the realities of these campaigns. Well, it's not necessarily stupid to stick to just one platform, but it's also wrong to pretend the opposite, which is to act like it's absolutely insane to even consider using both. It's like, no, it makes perfect sense to use both. Most people are site agnostic when it comes to crowdfunding. You want something, so you click on it and back it. However, certain communities are formed around crowdfunding. I believe there is a strong tabletop community around Kickstarter, and CG is a strong comic book community around IndieGoGo. And yet, as I said, you got more CG campaigns that fail than you do indie comic campaigns on Kickstarter. Or possibly even indie comic campaigns on IndieGoGo, for that matter. CG has a fairly bad track record of a lot of failed campaigns. I mean, not a lot as in, oh, the majority of them failed. No, it's a minority, but there's still quite a number that don't make it, which is, unfortunate. As a matter of fact, one of the ones I did a video on, I believe, I went ahead and backed it, and now they're going to do another. I got an email that they didn't meet their funding goal, so now they're going to try to do another all-digital campaign, I think, or something like that. Which, since I backed the digital anyway, I believe that works out fine for me. Just got to remember to go and look it up and back the new one. But anyway, if you plan to tap into CG, you better go to IndieGoGo, and unless you also plan to tap into a community of people that trawl Kickstarter for products similar to yours, so it is a good idea to double dip. The way I see it, EVS has privileges on IndieGoGo, and Malin has an axe to grind over jawbreakers with Kickstarter, while your boy Zach does not care and will occasionally back and promote Kickstarter projects. Yes, he will. He has talked about that. And will remain on IndieGoGo and shun those who don't. I figure if Kickstarter is willing to let him back on, is willing to let Zach on their platform at some point, he probably is going to go there. It's a question of whether or not they'll let him on. If they will let him on, though, I figure sooner or later he is going to try it. But unless somebody in CG double dips successfully, it is a bad idea to do so. And frankly, that is potentially an argument against being, officially CG, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to be relegated to only one platform. Not because that's what I want, but because that's what the big fish in CG want, and if I piss them off, then I'm fucked. Don't misunderstand, I totally get that it's exciting to be part of getting a book funded up to a big milestone like 500K or something usually like that. Yeah, but how many fucking campaigns actually get to that? Very few. It feels like you're part of something, and there's the sort of us versus them thing that was really going strong at times, like Doug's Bigfoot Bill campaign, when Ethan had the stream that sent the campaign into the stratosphere. That was exciting and fun to watch. I get it. Splitting campaigns when you make six figures right out of the gate almost every time with a dedicated backer base and a professional name behind you might not make sense. Yeah, but guys like Clint Stoker, who don't do those numbers, should explore every option to maximize their profitability, and for people that are in that six-figure club to bitch about him even considering it is absolute bullshit. I would agree. The ones that could really successfully double dip are probably the ones that wouldn't really need to. Why go through the hassle of managing two campaigns if you're pulling down six figures in one go on a single platform? It's the small guys who are involved in CG who depend on every dollar and might benefit more. Indeed. If they think they've hit a wall with their IndieGoGo backers, there's no reason they shouldn't consider another platform that could potentially reach more people. Yes. And now let's go look at a couple of things. Tim Lim's Common America Volume 2 on IndieGoGo got 1,507 backers and raised $42,518. His Kickstarter campaign for the same book got 2,179 backers and raised $66,001. There's also a $2,000 goal here, and it was doing the algorithm boosting $500 flexible on IndieGoGo. So, Tim Lim has clearly gotten to the point where I'm not 100% sure. I don't even remember if I think he's... I can't remember. It seems like he's doing the Kickstarter to start with, and then he's doing the follow-up campaign on IndieGoGo. Maybe just to sell any extra copies that he's going to have available or something. Seems like he may have started doing it that way. But anyway, he's doing better on Kickstarter. More backers and more money on Kickstarter. And obviously there's no guarantee this way, but combined, it's like that's pretty fucking good. Well over 100K combined from the two campaigns. And now let's look. It's kind of the opposite direction. Billy Tucci does, and he doesn't. I think previously he did them at different times, but now he seems to have switched to doing them at the same time. So this is the She Omnibus, which is his current campaign. IndieGoGo, he's got 852 backers right now, $92,118 of a $10,000 flexible goal. So he didn't do that algorithm thing, and yet he's already done so well that he's almost to 1,000% of it. And then Kickstarter, running the campaign at the same time, he's got 532 backers, $60,342. So he's doing considerably better on IndieGoGo, but part of that is because IndieGoGo is where the ComicsGate audience is, and a lot of them are backing it, both because they like him and because they like his product, and also because Ethan is promoting the shit out of it, like he does, because they're friends. So, but the combined total there is quite good, and he's probably going to be a six-figure campaign just on IndieGoGo. But it's not doubling, to have it on Kickstarter as well. But that's nothing to sneeze at, man. 60 extra K. And anyway, so he's doing quite well. Of course, he always does well, and I don't know. There's but whether you're an established person like Billy Tucci is, or whether you're somebody like Tim Lim, who's didn't really, I guess, have as much of a name, but made one, made a name for himself. He was CG, wasn't he? Wasn't Tim Lim considered CG back years ago or whatever? before deciding to you know, go independent. Well, everybody's independent, but he went independent from the from the independent collective. Whatever. Anyway, but and obviously these are both both these creators and both these campaigns are high performance. So there's no guarantee that everybody is gonna see any significant improvement by having campaigns on both platforms, but it's it is rather ridiculous to just say ahead of time, I'm not going to even try it. Like I'm just there's potentially money on the table. I'm just going to leave it there. It's like don't. You're not doing yourself any favors that way. You might be doing yourself harm. I don't think you're doing yourself. And I don't know. I mean, it depends, I suppose, in some respects, on how many people there are who are in the CG community or whatever, the backer community, who care enough. See, I don't care. I mean, I back CG projects, but and they're the only ones currently that I do videos about on my channel. But as far as backing, it's like I back shit on Kickstarter. I back things that are not CG. I'm not about to be CG exclusive and say that no, I'm not going to back anything unless they're flying the CG flag. I'm not going to do that, and I suspect most people are not going to do that. But there's always going to be a considerable number of people in CG that are going to feel like, nope, I'm not backing anything that's not CG. And they may choose to, or they may choose to follow whatever Ethan or whoever says. And if they, so it's like if you get branded by the big creators in CG or by the backers themselves in CG as being non-CG compliant somehow, like for instance, you did a campaign on Kickstarter, is like, that's a no-no. You're not allowed to do that. Then, and it's really shitty that some people get a pass. Like everybody just kind of gives Billy Tucci a pass. It's like he's not CG, but there's probably very few, even among that supposedly CG only base of backers. Probably. Most of them are, most of the hardcore CG people are still going to wind up backing him. And it, like they give him a pass for not being CG. Like they're like, no, I don't back anything but CG, except with certain exceptions. Except for Billy Tucci. It's like, yeah, I'll back him no matter what. And it's like, okay, one set of rules for for the little guys and another set of rules for the big guys, I guess. Yeah. Which that'll be coming up in the next video, which will be about the I don't know. It's slightly disturbing, I think. Not super disturbing, but it's slightly disturbing, sort of attitude on display. All right. Until the next one.